Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andy Cantrell, and the topic of my research paper was informal communication in organizations. So, the first thing that we really need to understand is the difference between formal and informal communications. So, I did some research into that, and really what I found was that formal communication consists mostly of the hierarchical kind of communications that we typically see in organizations. It's communications that have been developed and spent a lot of time in the process of developing, such as employee handbooks, policies, rules, standard operating procedures, those types of things. Informal communications, on the other hand, are those kinds of conversations that happen between coworkers at lunchtime, maybe across the cubicle, those types of things where they begin to share with information with one another. Um, Organizational leaders spend a lot of time focusing on those formal communication channels. But the thing that's really interesting about this area is that they're never going to be able to fully predict and facilitate the informal interactions that occur between their organizational members. So they really need to not only have those formal communication techniques that they traditionally use, but they also need to begin embracing the informal channels that are being used in the workplace. Swain, Sharma, and Chudari found that this type of communication really helps to establish friendships between coworkers, and it helps to improve their communication. It makes their communication more powerful and effective. And basically, Holmes and Mara take it even a step further, and they say that informal communication is the social glue of the workplace. It's what kind of holds everything together and makes that bond between coworkers. Ionism and his collaborators say in their research that they believe that informal communication is the pulse of the organization. It's the heartbeat of what keeps the entire organization going. So what they found is that through their research is that informal communication can help problem solve teamwork issues that occur within the workplace. It can help solidify the attitudes in regards to organizational goals, and most importantly, it allows for the development and of tolerance to differing opinions. And obviously we all know that there's times and situations in the organizations in which we work that there are many differing opinions. So that informal communication that occurs on a daily basis really helps there to be more of an acceptance to that. One of the interesting things found by Johnson, Donahue, and Johnson in their research is that informal communication may actually be more accurate than formal channels of communication, which is kind of bizarre because you would think that as a worker in an organization that you would tend to trust the information that's coming from the organizational leaders the most, rather than the things that you hear kind of around in the office and what we can traditionally considered to be that office gossip. But Johnson, Donahue, and Johnson's research shows that people trust those informal communication channels more. And what Kraut and his collaborators found was that informal communications considered to have more cognitive authority because the individuals tend to trust the informal sources more than they trust the formal sources. So I thought that that was some pretty interesting information that came out of the research. Companies that focus on formal communication channels are really finding themselves in a predicament at this point because the research by Khan and Khan is showing that innovative, smart, and customer relationship-driven companies are more likely to adopt easy, flexible, team project, friendly kind of communication styles than more uptight traditional organizations. And Khan and Khan say that they break the formal communication channels if decision making is compromised, delayed, or customer delivery is harmed. So really, their focus in these types of organizations is on the customer, and they're willing to do whatever. So that means if they need to move away from formal communication channels and kind of handle things more informally in sharing and communicating with one another, then that's what they're willing to do to keep that focus on the employees. So all of this simply can be implemented, and what we see is that it ultimately improves the bottom line of the organization. Employees that utilize informal communication channels are usually more motivated, they're more efficient. The Those employees are more dedicated usually to the company. So these are all great things that help add to the bottom line of the organization. Technology can be used to help facilitate informal communication, and it can be a great thing. But the key to using technology as a form or as a channel for informal communication is that it must have a low personal cost to the workers within the organization. If they have to put too much effort into making that technology work, then they're not going to utilize it. So therefore, it won't be effective in helping facilitate the informal communication. Another thing that with technology that impacts informal communication is that many times, especially if you're looking at technology like email, it's asynchronous. It's not in real time. So the longer someone has to wait for a response, it really becomes an ineffective tool and something that companies need to look at and see how they can better implement in technology that can help support those informal channels that are being developed. Formal communication can stifle creativity. It can lead its members to be less productive. Research by Chang and Jacobs shows that workplace communities influence efficiency. They also help increase revenue for the company, and it provides employees with greater job satisfaction. So really what needs to occur is that organizational leaders really need to adopt more informal communication channels, and they need to train their employees in ways in which they can utilize those informal channels most effectively. We don't want to use informal channels that become distracting and lead to decrease productivity by employees, where they're maybe focusing too much time on social media and those sort of things. So if companies begin to implement training for their employees to show them how informal communication channels can be really effective and lead to increased productivity, that's what needs to happen. So the more that we understand how informal communication channels are being utilized by employees, the better as organizational leaders will be able to train and implement those informal channels. So really, there needs to be more research done into how employees are utilizing it. The biggest frustration right now for researchers is that there is no solid way of measuring the channels of informal communication that are happening. There's no way, there's no tool or method that's been developed that lets them actually observe and measure that. So that's something that needs to happen in order for this research to continue and to see how it can impact organizations even greater. Crackhart and Hansen say that if the formal organization is the skeleton of the company, the informal is the central nervous system driving the collective thought processes, actions, and reactions of its business units. So, just in that one simple quote, we can see the importance of informal communication within an organization. So it's a pretty fascinating topic. I wish I had more time to really delve into some more of the research that I read about informal communication in organizations. But hopefully you learned a little bit, and thanks for listening.